This video is going to be a follow-up to my previous video, one of my previous videos titled Why Self-Actualization is Not for Muslims. Now, this video was titled intentionally to provoke you, but there was a intention behind it. That video did not reach in the way that I thought. I had a different set of assumptions, a different context, and YouTube being YouTube, the platform, I was not completely informed about the context that this video is going to be in, or the way it's going to reach you. Therefore, I made a couple of mistakes. I want to apologize for that, but I want to also explain what I got right and what I did not get right. Okay. Yes, the video was titled intentionally as such. Why self actualization is not for Muslims. Now, let me tell you what I did not get right. Okay, first, let me start with that. And then once I get these two aspects fleshed out, then I'll talk about, what this video is about ultimately, which is what self actualization does look like for Muslims. So, if you haven't watched that video, please do watch it and then come back to this one. So, when I say self actualization, I'm talking about self actualization as the highest virtue or your purpose. Now, if you reflect on how your society, your political systems, your markets, your economic systems, like anything and everything is designed. Now, you might think these are conspiracy theories, but I want to, sort of elaborate on this through dedicated case studies or dedicated video as examples to illustrate and understand from the root cause as to why and how this actually looks like. Okay. Now, those videos are coming, okay, in the future, inshallah. But that video is going to come a little bit later. Until then, let me tell you what self actualization is in that video, how I understood it, and let me explain. When you take the literal definition of self actualization, then you're not going to have the same understanding as that understanding I had in that video. However, the popular conception is that anything and everything that we're designing is just so that we make that sale, is so that we can get that vote, is just so that all that we're working for is actually for ourselves. I know a lot of Muslims who say this. I I want to make a lot of money because that's not haram, that's legal. But then, they get into this cognitive dissonance or the situation. When you read about the surah, when you read about the seerah of the prophets and their companions, those companions give away their entire savings. How are they able to do that? It's They come from a very different worldview, and that's not one which is I don't want anything of this world. Those guys were businessmen. They were pretty successful businessmen. But then why did they give away that? We can conveniently say they had high levels of iman. But how? Why? Because they had the prophet. Well, of course, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being himself, certainly he knew how to establish the system which he did, and certainly being a Muslim was a lot easier back then. However, they're Muslims, they're humans in the same way we are. If you're not able to reach there, why is it that we're not even able to understand where they're coming from? Like Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, in the time that the Muslims were asked to contribute whatever they had. Uh, you know, he gave away all of his belongings, and he said he only left Allah and His Prophet in his home. How can we understand this? Well, the reason is because we don't understand the Islamic worldview. When you put self actualization as the highest virtue, then you go to your khutbahs or you go to your masjids or your mosque, and then you say Allahu Akbar in your prayers. And you say Allah is the greatest. But then when you work, you're not working like that. You're not thinking about, okay, if I cheat in my business, if I, tell him a lie, I may make that sale. Nobody's going to know that. You can go and, go to your Instagram, go to your social media, go to your local imam. You'll hear all of these khutbas, but then when you go to your business, you see there's a very different paradigm being played out there. Okay, that's because divine presence is not like the highest priority over there. Okay, that's not the ultimate thing. That's what I mean when I said the system is designed to please the self. Now the self is not necessarily, you know you. Now you might be a very saintly being that I'm talking to. When I say self, the dominant system today, okay, which is the Western, worldview, or let's just say the secular worldview, wherein you don't have any, divine revelation as sort of the main source of, understanding the world. It is merely your sight, or let's just say your the material world is all that there is. Okay, when you make that the basis of reality, then what actually happens is, essentially, the worth of a human being and anything in this world, the way you understand the world, the limited only to the physical reality. What that means is your physical body, this world, that this is all that there is. And this philosophy destructs and destroys humans. Okay, you know the fact that God created this world, and there's a lot of people just taking advantage of the weaker people that He created, right? And there are people getting away doing all of these horrible things. Why did God design all of this? This is called the problem of evil in philosophy, right? When you engage with Western philosophy, you'd understand that humans are described as nothing more than a sophisticated animal. Okay, uh, there are animals that are far physically stronger, and I don't know what superior means in this context, but yes, if you define superior by physical might, then there are lots of other creatures that are far superior to us. That's how, Western psychology or Western, you know worldview works. A lot of Muslims will consume that literature, will consume that. I am not asking you to not engage in that. Understand why a lot of Islamic scholars discourage the masses from engaging in critical theory. Like, I don't mean the postmodern critical theory, I mean, in philosophy and all of these deep level thinking, because most people are easily swayed away with a lot of beautiful speech, and they don't have the tools or ability to essentially discern the truth from falsehood. To discern truth from falsehood, you need to understand, first of all, critical thinking, but also at the same time, you need to understand how different people are coming, like where different people are coming from, so that you're able to map them and put those things in their place. Okay, I learned from a lot of people with very different, perspective or different worldviews. I benefit from them too. However, you have to put them in their place. Okay? The Western psychology, or let's just say, the whole Western academia or academic system, with the science and technology, scientific and technological advancements, there's a lot of good that comes with it, no doubt. And I benefit from this. I mean, I'm making videos. Most of the software and the hardware and all of the tools that I'm using comes from non-Muslims. I benefit from it. So if self actualization is merely defined as realizing your potential, I don't need to make a video about it. Right? You're realizing your potential whether I talk about it or not. I'm realizing my potential. That's not what I mean when I say self actualization. You don't need to be told about that. When you make that your highest virtue, you will fight anything and everything in your way so that you can maximize your potential. Why is that a problematic principle? The reason is because sometimes you will be wrong, you will be unjust. And when you make that your principle, then you make you make yourself the center, and you'll automatically assume that everybody can make mistakes, but I cannot make mistakes. Although you would say, it sounds very bad when you say it, but subconsciously that's the kind of perspective that we are being sold. Now, whether that be in your school, whether it be in your workplace, whether that be in science, anywhere, all right, the conception of the human is nothing more than a sophisticated animal. And self-actualization, if not directly, indirectly, eventually leads to self-fulfillment, which as a principle is antithetical to the Islamic interest, which says you have to align yourself with the truth, not just the truth of yourself, but the truth of whatever Allah has designed. So you gotta put Allah in the center so you would be just in your dealings in all of that. Okay? Let's talk about the last part, which is what self actualization then does look like for Muslims. In my last video, I talked about how we can structure the Muslim Ummah. And this is not a strict categorization. You don't label somebody as category one, two, or three. You would take up different categories or different positions depending on your relationship or the context. This is just to give you a blueprint. I don't want to go over that again in this video. I'll bring that up again in my future videos, inshallah. But for now, if you haven't watched that video, please go check that out. And this video would make a whole lot of more sense. So, anyways, so once you have structured yourself and you understood your place in this whole system, then what you gotta do is then actualize your potential. Allah has given you the ability to code, to research. If you're a doctor, sure, go ahead and contribute. But you have to understand what problem you're trying to solve. That's what design is about, right? You are intentionally approaching a problem with, a specific idea or notion about what I want this world to look like. Okay, this is a problem. There are certain situations or certain circumstances that the secular worldview would not even consider it as a problem, but Islam sees that as a problem. Yes, slavery is a problem, but how do you address that? Yes, Palestine is a problem, but way Islam looks at a problem and asks you to approach the problem is different from how the secular worldview and lens asks you and gives you the lens. The problem is not as deep. And if it's not as deep, it's also talking about, addressing this in a very different way. It's only talking about how we can address it at a very surface level. Right? These are not sustainable solutions. It's not enough for you to just have a physical body that is healthy. A lot of people are going through mental health issues. Like, those are critical issues too. And if you reflect on the Western secular worldview or psychology, the way it approaches mental health, and I'm sorry, but I have to say it, I've tried to spend time with this. It almost takes a very escapist approach, right? In the sense that it solves the problem at the level of, human functioning. Okay, my bodies are working, that's okay. But, I lost my family. What about, like, I lost my family? People have killed me. I cannot do anything about it. Okay, what's going to be the solution? Well, there's a lot of stories that people tell themselves and then they try to numb themselves. Okay, that's why there's a lot of atheists who actually describe religion as nothing but stories and tales to numb your pain and suffering. That's, I can understand where they're coming from, And it is right if you understand religion in that way. Islam here is not just comforting you with, okay, in hereafter you're gonna get justice. It's just not telling you things to comfort you. It's also giving you evidence to believe in that and why it's true. It doesn't take up that numbing or that silencing approach. This reality may not always be comfortable, may not be always in the way that we expect it to be. But that's the purpose of this life. It's to connect us to God. Okay? It's constantly reminding you that you are not in control. Like, that control is only going to come to you in Jannah. And there's a lot of evidence that you can see, not just in in natural setting, but in every part or facet of our lives. God is reminding you that this life is a life of test. And that video was to remind you that if you're going to put yourself or any self, anybody else, at the center of anything and everything that you're deciding and designing in this world, then that's going to lead to a world of contradictions, to a world that is devoid of peace and purpose. And that's going to, at least for Muslims, lead to a fractured identity. So self-actualization is path to divine pleasure. Allah asks you to manifest your potential. It's Allah who has given you that money, that body, that everything, your parents, everything Allah has given you. Allah is asking you to spend that in His cause. But how do you do that? The way you do that is by understanding this creation. The way that the modern world has defined this creation is very different from how the Quran describes this creation. It's two different understanding for the same reality. And that's when you have cognitive dissonance. Now, starting from my next video, and actually, I thought that would be my, like that was going to originally scheduled to be the next video, but because I was receiving a lot of comments on that video, I thought I should clarify this. Not for the not to address the haters. They're gonna hate regardless. But for those people who are genuinely curious to understand why and what it is, here's the answer. But starting from the next video, I am going to talk about Islamic worldview and different concepts within the Islamic worldview, starting from qadr, rizq, and so on and so forth. Okay, I ask you to go ahead and engage in this in that video series because I think it's one that a lot of you can benefit from. It's certainly one that I think I benefited a lot from personally, like making that video series. I hope it's going to be beneficial for you as well. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.